Alright, so it's been a week since the last stream, and there's definitely something I need to talk about. So I decided to cut down streams into highlights and upload them onto my main YouTube channel, while also having the full archived VODs on a separate channel. So, because of editing through everything, I realized I made a huge mistake. I totally misread something on the tracker, and that is the Zunari check. For some reason, it didn't register whatsoever, that it said specifically for having the exotic flower in the shop. So because of that, one, we have not actually done that check, and two, I also accidentally saw what item it is, and it is very important. So, since we happen to be on Great Fish Isle anyway, we're gonna start out by going over here and trading the town flower up to the exotic flower. So, it's my misunderstanding of how this works. This is a great camera angle, but basically, the long side quest, as far as I can tell, is more specifically for the whole trading quest. The early stage to just get the exotic flower is not included, which is actually very fortunate in my opinion. So if I understand correctly, it should be possible to simply trade this back to him, and this will add we'll add both flowers to the inventory for the shop. So we should be good to go here. So yeah, at this point we'll get one reward, and then later on you'll get a different reward for getting everything. But for completing this much of the quest, we get the mirror shield, and for real this time, we are done with Windfall. Mirror Shield doesn't really open up too much, to be honest. It's basically only like one check in the overworld as far as I can tell. And then mostly just, temple stuff, except if you have the boss entrances closed, basically, in which case you would have to go through everything, including fighting, like, Shalhala again. So hypothetically, there might be situations where you don't even need the mirror shield, but given what I did see in the spoiler log, which wasn't any other item, but based on its placement on the list, that implied to me, like, this is considered, like, a required item for the seed. So there's something tied to one of these that's probably important, either within the dungeon itself, or tied to whatever is on Angular. That's the inherent problem. I actually don't know what this is, and like which part is actually the required part, and therefore there is still a little bit of mystery for us here. I assume we'll have to glide, but I guess you could also hypothetically do this. Yeah, I don't know if I've ever tried that before, if I just used the Decking Leaf. 34 and 35. It looks like 34 we already had, I just didn't open it for some reason. But 35 is the new one. So, we'll check the Islet of Steel first thing, and see if that ends up being important, or not. I also don't remember if we did everything there too. I think there's actually a few things. Never mind, there's only the one thing to do there. I actually don't know if that's gonna be it or not, or if this is gonna be like a fake out. That is actually the treasure, okay. So we will see if this is anything important. It might even just be like the Wind God's Aria, which will lead us to the Wind Temple. It is an orange rupee, so my assumption was incorrect. We never got the rupee on top of the island either. It would be funny if that ended up being like something important, but I just saw yellow and assumed there was a rupee. So just for the sake of peace of mind, as I'm, you know, throwing out this idea, I think I will just check, just for the sake of curiosity, to see what's on the top of this mountain. We also don't need any of the extra hearts or rupees around the area. We can simply fly up to the top. Yep, that is a yellow rupee indeed. So we were not missing anything. Actually, no, this is something. It's a treasure chart. So again, I made another really bad assumption there that the rupee was the actual treasure and not the treasure chart. So that's another one for the list of beginners, like rookies' mistakes I've made in this particular seed. But again, this is the first time I've ever done a Wind Waker randomizer to this extent. Again, not the first time I've tried, but the first time I've gotten this close to the end in one. So this is number 6, so that means we're only missing 4 treasure charts in the entire game, which is not surprising to me in the slightest. I know my luck. I'm not surprised whatsoever that it's not going terribly well. Alright, the Earth Temple. This isn't one of my favorite temples. I actually feel like it's a little bit cumbersome to navigate, mostly because of Medley herself, because of having to constantly swap over to her using the command melody for various tasks. It'll be a little bit easier than usual though, because we do have access to the Mirror Shield from the get-go, meaning we don't have to worry as much about finding things. Well, we can basically go out of order. For example, the whatchamacallit, there's a room early on where you need 2 mirrors, but we only have access to 1 basically in the traditional dungeon order. And once you have the Mirror Shield, you have to basically backtrack in order to actually open up this particular spot later on. But we can basically circumvent this. I feel like there's other stuff hidden here, but I'm trying to remember where that actually is. Transparent chest and warp pot room, that's gotta be this. That's a key. Not surprising whatsoever, because there's, I think, a locked door coming up before too long, so it's gotta be somewhere. This could be a little bit finicky just from the standpoint of we can basically open up the lower floor right away. So hypothetically, we might have to go out of order. For example, a key we need might be down here, and then we'll have to come back up later on. So again, this might be a little bit out of order. I would not be surprised whatsoever if this is a bit of a mess. This is the room I was talking about earlier, where there is actually the stuff that you basically have to do with the Mirror Shield, but you have to come back for an item later on. So like up here, you can make this first chest appear using Medley, but for the actual item in the next room, you would need to come back because both need to have some way to reflect, and you don't get the Mirror Shield until much later into the dungeon. So again, it is kind of neat being able to like skip around dungeons a little bit, kind of go out of order. Not too much though. Well, that's good, I suppose. We have 2 keys, the dungeon map, and the compass left of required checks for us. But again, this is why you actually do need the Mirror Shield specifically for this, and you can't have Medley get this for you. Again, this is a fairly late check, to be honest. I'm gonna open that later. I want to make sure I can find this one, because again, this might be an important one. It's so much nicer not having to switch to Medley, like, constantly. It's interesting, because Medley, I think, is a very fun character, but I just feel like the mechanics of both dungeons of the later 2, where you have to switch back and forth between them constantly, just ends up feeling a little bit repetitive after a while. I wonder if a remake could fix this. Like, a full remake, not just a remaster. Like, if you could, set it up in such a way that you actually don't have to, switch via song, and there's some other, like, just a hotkey, basically. I feel like that would make this a lot more, you know, doable, or tolerable at the very least, but I also feel like that might make it a little too easy, actually. Hope you're having a good day. I am having an okay day, I think, so far. So far so good, at least. Productive. I had to wake up a lot earlier than normal for a blood test, so that's part of the reason I'm streaming today, is because I'm actually on time for once. But beyond that, it's been going alright so far. No major complaints. Alright, so we have a little bit of an awkward situation here. That door's locked, which means we need to actually go out of order. We need to go to the basement first. I don't know why I'm collecting all this stuff. I don't need rupees anymore. Also, we only have one bomb upgrade so far. We're still at default number of bombs, which is just weird, because we have so much other stuff, but we are still just dealing with 30 bombs. I'm trying to think of anything that really needs bombs, though. I also don't know if it's a smart move bringing Medley along. It probably is a terrible decision. I can't use my sword here. I forgot that's how this area works. This is a predicament, actually. This might be dumb, but we'll see if it works out. Yep, that was dumb. Okay. Actually, the hand just threw Medley, which is very convenient for me. Yeah, that actually worked out very nicely, and I don't feel like I should have gotten away with that, to be honest. Well, we don't have to worry about soft locking anymore. We have both keys now that we need to get through here. So we're good to go there. Ocarina of Time, to me, just kind of feels like 3D A Link to the Past, while Majora's Mask has more unique things going for it. In general, I wish more games weren't set in Hyrule. And now I'm trying to think, actually. Wind Waker sort of counts on a technicality. Phantom Hourglass, Spirit Tracks, well, that's kind of a weird exception because New Hyrule. So yeah, it's kind of interesting to actually think about, because most games are set in some version of Hyrule, but I actually wish more weren't, just because I think it'd be interesting to move away from the traditional, like, settings. You know, Lanayru, Eldin, Farron, and so on. It'd be kind of interesting to just go on to, like, a totally new setting at some point. And I do hope that eventually we get something new in that regard, because, again, it feels like we've been spending a lot of games in just the same, like, two worlds, which are Breath of the Wild's Hyrule and A Link to the Past's Hyrule. I played Breath of the Wild again before Tears of the Kingdom came out, so it's not even that it had been a long time. I literally played these games like back to back. Somehow I didn't really burn out as badly on Tears as frankly a lot of people did. I still very thoroughly enjoyed Tears of the Kingdom despite having literally just played Breath of the Wild. The weird dynamic that I often talk about, or often think about with these two games is story. Breath of the Wild, I think, is a worse story told better. I don't know if that makes any sense, but that is my opinion on both games' stories. I think Tears of the Kingdom has a much more interesting story, partly because it's more guided in terms of, like, having an overall narrative, but basically, I think the delivery of the story is actually worse than Breath of the Wild's, even though it is a better story. So again, kind of an odd caveat there, but that is my genuine take on the stories of both games. Mostly because, like, Tears of the Kingdom kind of repeats information a lot more, while Breath of the Wild, like, when you finish a dungeon in Breath of the Wild, you get a very personalized cutscene to that champion, while with Tears of the Kingdom, basically all of the major dungeon cutscenes kind of just boil down to an info dump a little bit, to the point where I feel like they're a little bit redundant after a while, and that is like the main complaint I have seen about the story of Tears of the Kingdom, is just having to basically sit through an info dump 4 times. A lot of times with Zelda games, I feel like they're kind of experimental in that they're basically laying down foundation work for other projects. So for Echoes of Wisdom, as an example, I almost feel like, as fun as the mechanics are in Echoes of Wisdom, it almost feels like they just kind of expanded on A Link to the Past / A Link Between Worlds world, because they just were experimenting with the mechanics and wanted to use an existing level layout and expand on it in order to, like, focus more on the actual mechanic work. And I feel like that's the same way with Tears of the Kingdom as well, where reusing the map from Breath of the Wild is partly just because so much work was going into reworking all the mechanics that they also wouldn't have had time to make an entirely new, like, world. So they just kind of slapped it onto this existing setting, which I do feel like there are pros and cons in both ways. Again, as someone who did really enjoy Tears of the Kingdom, I do get the arguments of the world not feeling as special because we've seen it before. But still, I very much enjoyed both games, and I can't wait for the next Zelda game in like 2029 or whenever. Probably like 2029. That feels like a reasonable guess. You want more Minish Cap? That's fair. Who would even actually make it? I guess it would be Grezzo. They're the standard 2D Zelda studio, but I guess also on the other hand, like, the company that made Minish Cap isn't even around anymore. It was actually like a joint venture of a bunch of other studios, like Capcom and Bandai, I think. And maybe just Capcom. I don't remember. Like the exact specifics of it. But either way, there is the unique dynamic of, okay, that was, disconcerting. There is a unique dynamic of, like, a bunch of games were done by this, like, subsidiary. There were a couple of Kirby games, even. Amazing Mirror and, Squeak Squad, I think, were done by the studio. 1F. What room are we missing up there? We have everything, right? We have the dungeon map. We have the compass. It says second, casket and second crypt. I actually don't know which one is the... Okay, it's just a chew jelly. That is extraordinarily not worth it. Yeah, I really like Forgotten Land. I would recommend that one. Star Allies is very hit and miss for people. Some people really love Star Allies. A lot of people think it's very mid. And I tend to be more of a defender of Star Allies, though I also would say it's also not one of the better Kirby games, even as someone who did like it. Like, if you were to ask me to rank Kirby games, Star Allies would be very, like, low mid. But I still enjoyed it, basically, is my overall stance on it. The other problem with Star Allies is it was just kind of seen as a regression in some ways because all the other Kirby games on 3DS were quote-unquote 60 FPS. This is definitely one of those, like, revisionist history kind of things, in my opinion. That game is not 60 FPS. Robobot and Triple Deluxe drop frames quite a bit, I think. So yeah, it's definitely one of those things where it's like, yeah, I think locking to 60 or locking to 30 was the right call, and I wish actually Link's Awakening Remake and Echoes of Wisdom and also Mario RPG Remake had done that, because I think all those games were not close enough to 60 to justify massive dips. So yeah, I kind of wish all those games had been capped, but again, at this point, whenever a game comes out with an uncapped frame rate at this point, like Echoes and Mario RPG Remake, the overall assumption right now is just they're basically waiting for Switch 2, and again, we'll have to see if that actually pans out or not. Otherwise, it'll be really weird if the performance is still just limited to Switch 1 specs, in my opinion. But you never know with Nintendo, for better or worse. They'll always keep you on your toes, as a company. Alright, Silver Rupee. Not really worth it, in my opinion, for all the work that we have to go to get that all set up. But again, we have to do that anyway for the next couple of checks. Hopefully the crystals will restock our supplies in a bit as well, because we are running low on a lot of things at the moment. That was a very bad Stalfos fight. One bomb actually took out one of the two, so that was good, but group encounters I almost feel like are the weakness of a lot of Zelda games actually, just because Z-targeting is great against one-on-one opponents, but I almost feel like it falls apart very quickly when you have a group and you're trying to like frantically switch lock-on targets. So yeah, all stocked up again, thankfully, so no harm done. Actually, I'm a quarter heart short. That's not a big deal, but just, you know, wish I'd gone back to full hearts. I didn't really think that through very well. Southwest Crypt, but there's also, it says chest in third crypt. I don't remember getting that, to be honest. Big key chest in third crypt. I mean, I must have gotten it. We've opened up all the other chests or other like checks, so that's gotta be it. Submarine chart, that is completely useless at this point. I think we've gotten every submarine already. I feel like this fight can go really well or really poorly, so we'll have to see which one it is this time. The other thing is, we luckily did get the hurricane spin right before this dungeon, or actually, I think in the dungeon, so we can actually hurricane spin, which is very lovely, because that will help us in our ability to take out a lot of these smaller Poes, and just immediately get through a cycle really quickly, instead of having to like manually hunt down each one. It is a silver rupee. Yeah, that was arguably not really worth the effort put in, but oh well.